Here's a preview of what you'll hear on this episode of Beyond the Wheel.
We find the Wakespeeds definitely more needed and required from a safety perspective on your higher powered systems, right? The same SKU, though, will handle 12, 24, or 48, whatever your system is producing. The Wakespeed 500 can handle all three voltages, and actually even handles voltages in between. Like in the marine applications, you may get into some 32 volt applications. The Wakespeed performs well there.
Now enjoy the show.
You are listening to Beyond the Wheel, a podcast about the people and ideas that drive the RV community forward.
Looking to get out there and stay out there? Battleborn Batteries lithium-ion batteries are here to power your RV, marine, and off-grid adventures. Designed as an easy drop-in replacement for traditional lead-acid batteries, these reliable solutions have 2 to 3 times the power, charge 5 times faster, are a fifth of the weight, and last 10 times longer. Offered in a variety of models in unique sizes and shapes, ranging from 50 amp hour to a robust 270 amp hour, and backed by a 10-year warranty. Battleborn batteries are built to fit your needs and power your experiences. On the road, on the water, and off the grid, reliable power is here. Check them out at battlebornbatteries.com.
Many RVers are always searching for more power. Solar panels, generators, and lithium batteries are becoming more and more common in RVs. Well, there's another tool available to help you harness the power created by your engine. On today's episode, we are joined by Wade Seaberg, the Chief Revenue Officer at Dragonfly Energy. He is going to tell us about the Wakespeed Regulator. As you will learn, this device works with an alternator to harness some of the power generated by your engine to charge your battery. This is one of our most educational episodes, and we hope you enjoy the conversation with Wade.
Hey, Wade, thanks for joining us back on the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Wakespeed and Dragonfly Energy?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kenny and Sean. So my name's Wade Seaberg. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Dragonfly Energy. I oversee the revenue side of our business, from everything from the Battleborn batteries pack to the Wakespeed Alternator Regulator. So yeah, happy to be on your guys' podcast. And alternators are always kind of a little bit of black magic, it seems like, from everybody. Not everybody really understands them. And we're learning more and more every step we make within Dragonfly Energy. So hopefully we can share some knowledge out there with your audience.
Yeah, so that leads to the next question is, how would you describe Wakespeed product and what they do? And I would ask you to put that in as simple of terms as possible to begin with, because I know I'm clueless about this.
Sure. So Wakespeed's an advanced alternator regulator, right? Every alternator that's out there, whether it's in your car or a secondary alternator, has a regulator. On your car, it's typically internal, right? It's a regulator that's internal to the alternator. You never see it, you never touch it, right? The Wakespeed product has some advanced features to be able to regulate that alternator and protect it, and manage the relationship between your house battery bank and the alternator itself. So that's, in a nutshell, it's an advanced alternator regulator.
Okay. And then, Wade, when you say protect the alternator, does it also protect the batteries? Like if somebody did not put an alternator regulator in between their alternator and their batteries, what type of damage could be caused on either side of it?
So we want to be like, it depends on a lot of variables, right? And the more power that you're pushing and generating, right, the more severe those fault conditions can happen, right? So yes, there's damage that can happen between the two. You want to be mindful of that when you're installing any sort of power system into your vehicle that you're charging off the alternator. If you're charging off of a chassis battery, right, there really isn't, there's not a whole lot of damage that can happen, because that alternator is internally regulated. If you're using the chassis alternator, right, it's typically internally regulated and it has a regulator on it to protect itself. So if you're just adding an auxiliary battery bank to your motorhome, and it already has an existing battery bank, you're typically okay, right? Whether it's lithium or lead acid that you're upgrading to, you're typically okay. But if you're going to add a second alternator, or if you're going to add a high-powered system that's going to have a different voltage than the chassis voltage, then that's where you really have to take a look at a whole system design and take a little bit deeper of an approach. It's not just as simple as swapping out.
And then when you're talking about charging from a chassis battery, say to your house battery, is that what you would consider DC to DC charging?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we say that anything that's under, well, kind of, well, not we say, but like a good rule of thumb is that if you're under 2,000 watts of power that you're moving, you really can accomplish that with a simple DC to DC charger, right? Now, if you're anything over that, then you're getting into some higher powered systems, and you want to have an advanced regulator to be able to control that. And especially if you're installing a second alternator, then you need to really be mindful of it.
Okay. Well, you just, sorry, Sean, I'm going to jump in there one more time. You just said something that I was going to ask you later on. You said if you were to add a second alternator. So to use a Wakespeed device, you don't necessarily need a second alternator. You can run this off your primary.
Well, so some people will make the decision, hey, we're gonna change the primary alternator, right? We're gonna go to a larger alternator, still only have one, right? Not a second one, but it's gonna be a bigger alternator. Maybe it's gonna put 300 amps of power out there instead of just the 170 that came stock with the chassis. We're gonna go to a bigger alternator, push more power. Then you would also want to potentially have a Wakespeed regulator in there. So that would be the single alternator application. And then obviously if you're adding a whole second alternator because you're going to have an isolated house system, you'd want to have a Wakespeed product there.
This sounds like it's not really applicable to a towable then. It would be more of like a motorized type of RV, not a towable.
It can be applicable to a towable. If you are going to, if you can order a lot of your larger pickup trucks now. You can order with a second alternator on there, and if you're going to run a high power charge line to the back of the coach and equip it, or to the back of the truck, right, to the bumper hitch, and then be able to charge at a higher power, yes, you would want to use a Wakespeed there. But I would say 98% of the operations, it would not apply to a towable application. Now we're working on some systems involving DC to DC charging that will take some of the intelligence and some of the technology that we've advanced in the Wakespeed product, and are working to apply that to a towable application because we see the need, and we see honestly we see the desire and the capabilities that are sitting untapped. Right, when you're driving a vehicle down the road, you have a lot of power generation that's happening that's not being utilized, and we see the ability to be able to store that and harvest that power in a responsible way, so that way it can be deployed later rather than it just going to waste.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was possible, to what you said about running a higher power line back from your truck to your towable. I didn't even realize that was a possibility.
Yeah, we've had some early adopters and customers who have done that on their own, and yeah, it works really well. Now it's that's probably not a DIY project. That's not a project I'm undertaking, right? That's something that they're going to an upfitter to be able to pull off, right?
And then wait, this sounds like it puts power into the batteries fairly quickly. I got two questions for you. One, does it work at idle, or do you need to be actually pushing air, like moving down the road? And two, is this a replacement for solar? Because it does put power into your battery bank, so fast and so efficient.
So it's not. It kind of depends. It's not a replacement for solar. I would say it augments solar, right? If there's solar prevalent, and you really, like I said before, you really have to take a look at the system approach, right? So you have to decide, okay, how am I using my power? For an example, if you plan to run your systems while you're in motion and driving down the road, right? A second alternator that's going to generate a lot of power to be able to handle that rooftop air and those other demanding loads is really important to have on board, right? So that's where the second alternator and a Wakespeed product come in hand. But if you're parked and you have solar, like that's the best and least expensive way to harvest energy. But it's also a slower way to harvest energy, right? Or to generate power. So depends on how quickly you need to regen and store your power, but the Wakespeed product allows you that flexibility. So you can use them in tandem, and you can figure out, okay, do we want to bias the more green power source, or do we, how do we want to? So that's something that's more of a system approach.
Okay. And then as far as idle goes,
And then you had a second question. Yeah. At idle, you absolutely can charge the batteries. A lot of that depends on the alternator that you're using. So some alternators have a different cut-in wattage or RPM speed before they'll start to push power to the house battery, right? It really depends on what your product selection is on the alternator side, and we help with that at Battleborn Batteries. We assist customers every day. Also at wakespeed.com. I got to put this in if people are looking for more places to be able to get some advice. There's a where to buy on there that tells you exactly, who you can go to if you want somebody like more consultative in your exact system. That's a great spot to go for a resource.
Okay.
So, but yeah, you can charge offline.
And is this do you find that the consumers that are buying or installing Wakespeed regulators, are they mostly running 12-volt systems or 24 volts or 48? Is it optimal for one over the other?
It's not necessarily optimal for one over the other. We find the Wakespeeds definitely more needed and required from a safety perspective on your higher powered system, right? The same SKU though will handle 12, 24, or 48, whatever your system is producing. The Wakespeed 500 can handle all three voltages, and actually even handles voltages in between. Like in the marine applications, you may get into some 32 volt applications. The Wakespeed performs well there. Just depends on the programming on the device. But when you get your higher powered systems, I mean, we'll have sometimes an 8,000 watt alternator that will run with the Wakespeed product. And the main difference between Wakespeed and some other regulators that are out there, and the reason why it's so advanced, is that we're looking at voltage, at current, as well as temperature. And you're looking at what the BMS is telling the BMS that's on the battery bank, what that's telling the Wakespeed it needs for recharge. And then it's monitoring the state of health of the alternator as well and what it's able to produce. And it also keeps in mind what the chassis demands are, right? So a chassis battery has very different demands on it than what a house battery bank does. And so that's why you have to really take into account all three of those factors, right? Voltage, your current, and also your temperature, so that you don't overtax that alternator by asking too much of it for too long of a time frame, right? You want to make sure that you're keeping all your systems healthy.
And so when you say that you really need it for the higher power system, is the problem with the house batteries, or would it be with the alternator, or is it everything combined that you just discussed?
It's kind of everything combined, right? So like on a 48 volt system, if you got a really high powered system and the BMS on the battery bank says, hey, we're full, right? We're done taking power. Well, that alternator, if it's not told ahead of time that we're done taking power, there's a lot of energy in that system that has to go somewhere, right? And if it goes somewhere uncontrolled, you could damage other appliances, other items in the system. And so you want to make sure that you're turning that field current off ahead of the batteries turning it off really abruptly, right? So that's really that relationship that you're understanding and mindful of. And we do it. We've been doing it for almost a decade now, and really understand it. The two founders of Wakespeed, Al Thomason and Rick Jones, came out of the alternator business and really developed this technology to be able to handle virtually any externally regulated alternator out there, right? We can handle a ton of them. There's a list of appropriate ones that we've already interfaced with that have, preloaded settings and things like that. But when you get, and then to circle back to the 12 volt side, on the 12 volt side, a lot of those alternators have what's called avalanche diodes that are already on them that can absorb that spike that might happen if the BMS turns off. So it's not as critical at 12 volt, but it still is good to maintain the health and have really good communication between the battery bank and that second alternator. The more power you're pushing, the more important.
So if I have an RV that I know has a Wakespeed in it, is it a set it and forget it type of thing, or is there some stuff I need to be doing to make sure that it's keeping up with the system?
If it's been installed, a number of OEMs use the Wakespeed product, and if it comes on an OEM installation, there's really nothing that the owner of the RV needs to do. It really is like once the profile's been set up, it's learning the different systems and maintaining them appropriately. There really is very little, there's no maintenance that needs to be done to the device, right? That it's but there is, from time to time, we may have like a firmware update that needs to happen, and it'll push notify you of that. But really, those are just more monitoring level, items. It's not necessarily, it's still going to function fine.
So just a little bit ago, you said that there were two founders of the company. So obviously, Dragonfly did not create this company. It was already started. What is it that Dragonfly saw in Wakespeed that made you guys want to purchase?
We see the migration happening in RVs to higher power demands, right? It's just it's natural. We see that progression happening, and as we looked at our system approach, we realized more and more the need to understand that relationship better between the alternator and the battery bank. We got exposed to the founders of Wakespeed through some RVIA interactions, and were really intrigued by their knowledge on the topic. And they also had a real high level of intelligence into a lot of different battery manufacturers and how they go about their systems and their BMS interaction and things like that. So we knew that we could gain a lot of knowledge there as our systems became more advanced, and we could use and they were, Wakespeed was at an inflection point in their business, right? There were two founders, and they grew it and grew it and grew it, and they were both probably in their later stages of their career, and they you know either had to invest heavily into the business to continue the growth that they were experiencing, or make a move like what they did, which was choose to sell it and partner with with Battleborn and Dragon.
So the name Wakespeed is actually like a boating term, right? You're either coming in or coming out of port. What was the company originally focused in boating and then expanded into the RV industry? They realized that, hey, this is a great opportunity or product for the RV industry as well?
So it kind of came out of the marine market, right? They had a need in that market. They both live in the Pacific Northwest, and there was a real they identified a strong need for better alternator regulation within the marine market, where alternators are commonly applied to engines. They don't come necessarily stock with an alternator on the engine. And so there was a need for regulation there. So they were able to develop that product in that marine market, and we've had it's been a great market for us on the marine side. There's a lot of dual engine vessels that are out there, and so making sure that you have so then you have two alternators that are maybe started at different points in time, right? Maybe the port side starts before the starboard side, or vice versa. And when you do that, you have to make sure that you're communicating between those two alternators so that one of them is not bearing the brunt of all of the loads in the system, and the other one's just kind of running at idle, right? So you want to make sure that you're taxing both of them the way that the system was designed. And so it's been fun to get involved for me, coming out of the RV side primarily. It's been fun to get involved in some unique applications and really press the envelope with what our batteries are able to.
And besides marine and RV, are there any other applications that you're aware of for this type of product?
Oh yeah. There's a bunch. Whether it is trucking or even stationary off grid, like you had a DC generator and you wanted to recharge your battery bank. That's a good application. Mining, kind of pseudo military applications. There's been some of those over the years. Just a lot of different early adopters have been out there trying to figure out how do we use the power that we're already generating. Just maybe it's they're losing it due to heat that's coming off of the engine, or all of that is energy we can somehow figure out how to harvest, right?
It was funny that you mentioned trucking. I don't typically, I mean, I'm not a trucker, so I don't think of them too often, but I was at the world's largest truck stop off of I-80 in Iowa, and I just went in there just to look around. And I was surprised, and I probably shouldn't be, of how many appliances and features that we have in our RVs are very similar to what these guys are using in their trucks, whether that be like, the 12-volt refrigerators and the air fans and things like that. So it makes sense that you guys would be looking into the truck as well to power their rigs and the way, because they're always at rest areas and stuff like that off grid too.
Absolutely. No, the trucking market is a growth market for us, and we're excited about it, and we have many projects that we're working in that market. It's kind of behind the RV market a little bit in some of their applications, but yeah, it'll be a good one.
Yeah. Going back to the functionality of it, Wade, you had mentioned that you don't necessarily need a second alternator. If somebody were to run this with a second alternator, does the Wakespeed regulator regulate both power coming off those alternators, or is it just kind of just paying attention to that secondary?
It's really just it can run two alternators, right? It can handle the relationship between two.
Okay.
Absolutely. But they both have to be externally regulated, right? So you have to have access to the field current set in the alternator. So on a typical stock alternator that's coming on a cutaway chassis, that's a Chevy or a Ford or a Mercedes chassis, you aren't going to tie into that stock alternator. Okay. You're going to only hook up the Wakespeed to the second alternator that's going to already be an externally regulated alternator that we can monitor and be able to control.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Got it.
But it's capable of multiple alternators or more
Yes.
than one anyway. Okay.
Yes,
well, that's good to know too then.
Yeah, like so for instance on a Prevost bus application, a lot of times on those big pushers, there'll be sometimes three alternators on there. Mm-hmm. They'll have mounting blocks where you mount, I think up three, if I remember correctly. But one Wakespeed will run two of them by itself, right?
Okay.
So that's very common.
is there a max wattage that can go through that wake speed?
So the actual we're monitoring and controlling the alternator, but we're not the power that's coming off the alternator is not actually passing through the Wakespeed product,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Got
So
it.
from that aspect, it's really your real limitation that you see is with the amount of space that you have within the engine bay to put an alternator. Like I mentioned, an 8,000 watt alternator. That's a very large
Big.
alternator. Like
Yeah.
you have to have a lot of space in the engine compartment to be able to put it into the engine block, and the bracketry required to be able to do that. So that's really where you're limited.
Okay. Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this is a good way for people to add another source of power to their existing system.
Yeah,
And
100%.
and if someone is interested in gaining, I would say, efficiency in what they have already by using something like this, who do they talk to see if it is a direction they might want to go, if it would benefit them? Are there people at Dragonfly that are knowledgeable in this, or is it better to go to Wakespeed? Where does somebody go to see how they could apply this to their system?
For sure. So we have a number of techs that are very well versed in Wakespeed at Battleborn batteries, right? So they would call, so Dragonfly, Battleborn, Wakespeed, the number is going to go to the same desk, right? And it's going to get routed to the appropriate application case, right? So if there's a Wakespeed question, that call goes to those sales professionals to be able to assist that application. And then also, like I said, at wakespeed.com, there's a where to buy tab on there, and there's an across the whole country, and you'll be surprised at how many marinas are also getting into the terrestrial applications, right? So it's been interesting to watch that evolution happen.
And then it sounds like it's possible to do this DIY, but it doesn't sound like it's very recommended to do it DIY.
Yeah.
You could do a lot of
Yep.
damage.
I would say it that way. Like if you're comfortable hanging an alternator on an engine block and handling the pulleys and the belts and everything that goes with hanging a second alternator, you can absolutely tackle the wake speed in addition to that, right? But if you're not comfortable doing that, like I never changed my own oil in my vehicle, right? I'm not that type of mechanically inclined person. I would never tackle this on my own, right? But there are a lot of people out there that are mechanically inclined and able to do this. It's just I would put it the way you did, right? You can do it, but it's not right.
And there's plenty of installers or
Yeah,
mechanics around that are comfortable doing this and have probably done it many times.
absolutely.
And the resources from Battleborn, Dragonfly, Wakespeed can recommend those type of people. I'm assuming.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. We have a whole network of folks that we can turn that customer over to be able to really assist them and hold their hand through the process, and also just paint the expectations properly for what they are wanting to accomplish, right?
What about somebody that's kind of fresh, Wade, in the sense that they're about to add some Battleborn batteries to the system, they're about to do solar, they're interested in a wake speed. Can the people over at Battleborn Batteries help them decide what they should be doing first, as far as maybe they don't want to go all in on day one. Maybe they want to do the lithium batteries and or solar or the wake speed regulator. Can somebody there kind of walk them through the advantages of the two different types and say, well, let's figure out how you're going to be camping first, and then we'll decide like which system best fits your configuration?
Good question, Kenny. And that's exactly right. Yeah, they call in, we can help them through it. We'll ask a series of questions of how do you intend to use the vehicle, right? And then you size appropriately battery bank as well as your power generation sources, right? So how much real estate do we have on the roof, right? If this is a big Class A or a big fifth wheel,
Oh, yeah.
you've got a lot of real estate up top that you might be able to deploy a decent amount of solar. And if you're going to spend a lot of time stationary, maybe it doesn't make a lot of sense to put something that needs to be idling or in motion on there for your power gen source. But if you are going to be driving frequently between stops, then let's harness the power off the engine.
Okay. All right. And then as far as efficiency goes, Wade, can you speak a little bit about efficiency? Uh, Running off a second alternator with the Wakespeed regulator, will people notice a decrease in, say, miles per gallon or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are very mindful of that, as well as emissions and standards that are need to be upheld on the vehicle. So we take into account what the chassis demands are, as well as what the house bank demands are. So you may notice like a slight reduction in fuel mileage, but it is very slight. We less than a mile per gallon reduction in your fuel consumption. So yeah, it's a really efficient way. I don't have the exact stats on me, but it's a very efficient way to generate energy and then when paired with lithium, it's a great way to harvest and store that power.
Okay. Yeah, I would imagine so too, because it's not something that is, like you were saying, it's actually regulating the power. It's not asking for that full demand, full power all the time. It's going to fluctuate depending on what your needs are. So it's not, say, like a high rev all the time type of
Right. Right. It's not at all. You think about it, a starting battery, right? It demands a lot of amps in a very short amount of time, right? And then it's really doesn't do anything, right? The onboard alternator powers all the rest of the systems, right? While the engine's going, that alternator is powering the rest of those systems. So that second alternator has a much different function than what that primary alternator does, and so it's really a unique application that needs to be taken into consideration. The other thing that I'd say is that the Wakespeed product is full RVC, right? So when you look at integrate, when the OEMs look to integrate it, right, it's visible on that RVC CAN network. It's also very visible within the Victron suite of products. So like a lot of people in our community are very familiar with Victron products. They know that dashboard that Victron has on their intelligence products. So the Wakespeed actually appears on there as a power gen source for folks on the DC side, similar to how the solar appears on there. So you actually see the alternator and it's visible. That's another nice feature and integration that we've done with our partners over at Victron.
It seems like to me, Wade, that with the lithium batteries and the even the size, the I guess amp hour capacity growing in lithium batteries, the improvements in inverters, improvements in solar panels, and then using things like a Wakespeed to harness power from your engine, you can you at some point we're going to be able to do away with onboard generator for RV.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You're seeing a movement happen at the OEM level. A lot of it, California is one of the top RV retailing states in the country, and you're seeing a movement happen that's being led by them to reduce and or eliminate onboard generators altogether. And so OEMs are actively trying to figure out how they still provide the power needs to their customers. And the Wakespeed product and that second alternator is a very efficient way to be able to do that and provide that to customers so that they're able to not necessarily, we're not trying to promote storage while idling, right? We're really just trying to promote using that power during motion to really harvest that power that's being generated anyways, right? And be able to redeploy it when we're stationary and want to.
in something like a diesel pusher or even a diesel engine in general, like for people that are using it for towables, is there a lot of wasted power that that is just lost while you're driving?
I don't know how much of it's wasted. Diesel engines like to run hotter, right? Because when they run cool, I mean, let me try to put my mechanic hat on, right? I'm told that a diesel engine at idle has to go through a lot of regen phases, right? With the diesel emission fluid and things like that. So when it's running at cruise control, right, and running hot, so to speak, it's very efficient in how it runs, right? That's why long haul truckers are using diesel engines, and there is wasted power that's there, right? But you want to make sure that you're not robbing the chassis power it needs. And so that's why understanding that relationship, I leave up to the experts that we have over at Wakespeed and kind of let them tell me, hey, these are the applications that it works really well on, and these are the ones that.
Yeah, I guess my question or my comment really was what it was you're not really stealing power from the chassis. You're
No.
using power that's also there
Yeah.
along with the power needed for the chassis.
Yeah, you're using power that's already being generated, right? But like
Yeah.
that alternator is capable of generating more power than what's being used by the chassis. So we're just using that excess power.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
So I don't know. I'm a little slow sometimes, Wade. What
You're
clicked in
fine.
my mind was, what clicked in my mind was like, I have a ton of miles on my RV, and of course, parts will start to fail on my RV. Whenever the time comes for me to change my alternator in my RV, I could always switch my primary alternator to something that would work with the Wakespeed regulator, and then start using that power from my engine as well to kind of complement my solar. So something down the line for me in the future anyway, swap out my alternator when it's time for a new alternator and just replace it with one that would work with Wakespeed.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely an option, and that's one that we alluded to earlier, right? Where we have customers that decide, okay, I don't necessarily want to put a second alternator on. Maybe they don't have room for it, or maybe there's another device that's on that mounting block that they're not able to use a second alternator, so they increase the size of their primary alternator, and they choose to make it an externally regulated alternator, and then they're able to use the extra power, right, they generate for the storage.
Yeah.
It's actually absolutely a good application.
Okay, perfect. Do you guys have a list on your website, or do you have a recommended brand of alternator that you guys deal with, or do you just let people pick the alternator that they want to use as long as it's compatible?
So we do have a list of ones that we've worked with in the past, and there's a number of other resellers of the Wakespeed product that will pair it with an alternator that is known to work with the Wakespeed product very well. The main thing that you have to be able to do is control the field current, and most alternators have an area where we can monitor the temperature and the voltage off of. Right, we can capture that through some shunts and other things that come with the Wakespeed product. But it really just has to be capable of being externally regulated. That's the main thing that you want to make sure of. There's a number of alternator shops, electric motor shops that will take stock alternators, and with a few changes and tweaks, they make them into externally regulated alternators. And those shops and install shops are available on our website.
Oh, okay. Even the shops are.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yep.
With Dragonfly acquiring Wakespeed, how has that benefited the consumer?
So the full benefit of the acquisition hasn't pulled through yet to the consumer, but the direct benefits today to the consumer is a wider a much advanced technical service team, right? before Wakespeed was acquired, there was really only about 2 individuals that could support the Wakespeed product. We've also been able to manufacture more Wakespeeds, so to be able to get those into the market. There's also been some app development where we've been able to tweak the app. So those are direct benefits today that benefit customers of Wakespeed. But there are some untapped technologies within Wakespeed that will allow for better integration into the chassis demands, so that we make sure that we're and also the battery side of things that are yet to come, that are advancing through our R&D department and through our product development team. So we're really excited about those, and I can't share much more than that yet, because some of those are there's some patent applications being filed, things like that. So.
Well, I believe that's all of our questions, Wade, unless we left something out or if there's anything you want to add that we missed.
I think we're good, guys. I think we hit everything.
Thanks for coming on, Wade. And if people are interested in finding out more or seeing how this can augment their current systems, they can give the folks at Battleborn Batteries a call, and one of the experts there can help walk them through their system and if this will benefit them at all.
Absolutely, and I can't speak highly enough about our technical sales and support team. They really are second to none in the industry, and I always say it's a delightful experience to call into Battleborn Batteries.
I love when we have guests return on the show, and I feel like Wade was a wealth of knowledge, and now I have a good understanding of what Wakespeed offshore regulators can do, not just for RVers, but for truckers, boaters, and people living off-grid. I like that this can be an additional way to put power back into our batteries, or a standalone solution, and with Dragonfly Energy now leading this company, I'm sure customer service is going to be top-notch. Thanks for listening. But before you go, could you please take the time to leave a comment or a review on your favorite podcast platform? These ratings really help the podcast get recognized and grow. Take care all, and safe travels. Looking to get out there and stay out there? Battleborn Batteries lithium-ion batteries are here to power your RV, marine, and off-grid adventures. Designed as an easy drop-in replacement for traditional lead-acid batteries, these reliable solutions have 2 to 3 times the power, charge 5 times faster, are a fifth of the weight, and last 10 times longer. Offered in a variety of models in unique sizes and shapes, ranging from 50 amp hour to a robust 270 amp hour, and backed by a 10-year warranty. Battleborn batteries are built to fit your needs and power your experiences. On the road, on the water, and off the grid, reliable power is here. Check them out at battlebornbatteries.com. With the complexity of all the systems in an RV, I always say it's not if something's going to break, but a matter of when is something going to break. That is why I think an extended warranty for RVs is so important. We first interviewed Wholesale Warranties back in 2019 and immediately became impressed with how their policies worked, such as you can take your RV to any licensed repair shop, including mobile repairs. They also have personalized service plans, making sure you are getting the right policy for your needs. And if you think your RV is too old for a policy, you might be surprised to hear that RVs up to 20 years old can still be approved for a policy. That is more age lenient than most RV parks I've stayed at. Go to wholesalewarranties.com/beyond the wheel or click the link down below in our show notes to get your free quote today.